Got it. Hey, everybody. This is Mark. I am running for the U.S. Congress in Texas 13th District. And tonight we have some special treat about education. We have a couple of guests, three guests with us, who are all running for the Texas House in the statewide elections. And before I start bringing all of our people on, I want to read a quote to you by Thomas Jefferson about education. So Jefferson, those of you who might not know, one of our founding fathers, but also very invested in public education. He actually sold his book library as the first Library of Congress selection. So what he has to say is there are two subjects indeed which I shall claim my right to further as long as I breathe, the public education and the subdivision of counties into wards. I consider the continuance of a Republican government as absolutely hanging on these two hooks. And we could talk about the subdivision part if you have questions, but really it's about public education, and that's what tonight is all about. So as we see what we're doing right now, with our government is doing, dismantling public education, taking away funding, and taking away our kids' futures, it's a very worthwhile topic to talk about. So what we'll do tonight, I'll introduce our guests. We'll have a good conversation. We'll open it up to questions, anything you'd like to ask. If you're watching this recorded, please ask us questions in the comments and we'll get back to you with further clarification or more in-depth discussion with everybody that we're having tonight. So our group tonight, in addition to me, we've got Diana Loya. She's running for House District 87. Heather Wallace, running for House District 88. And Leilani Barnett, who's running for House District 69. Okay. And here's everybody. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
So why don't I'll just go around the horn where I have it. So Diana, to you, where on the screen is you're to my left. So why don't you start, talk a little bit about yourself. What do you do? What about education? And what are you trying to do to fix it?
So my name's Diana Loya. I'm running for House District 87. And I joined this race, really my number one priority. And the number one reason I decided to join this race was because of education. I've been an educator for 20 years. I am now at the district level supporting our schools in our school district. I have been everything from a bilingual teacher to an interventionist to an instructional coach. And now I get to support every single school. I am working at a school right now that is in trouble. It's an F-rated school, and it's my heart. So I decided to join this race because of that. I did not know anything about what a state representative did. So I kind of stumbled upon the chance. I never thought an educator like myself, a normal person like myself, would be able to represent our district. So I'm here with big hopes and dreams to do something for House District 87. I have 3 children of my own. My husband ran for, he's a veteran. He also ran for land commissioner and is now working for Gina. So again, these hopes and these dreams that we have for, especially in education, I think, thinking of how tired we are as educators with everything that is going on. I think it's just every educator should be upset and every educator should be mad at the situation that's going on right now. So we're seeing more and more educators step up and have a voice and represent each other, because we know that's not happening at the state level right now.
Thank you. So you mentioned Gina. She's running for governor. And so I heard the polls are pretty tight with that race. So
They are.
I'm really excited that your husband is helping out with that. I had a great conversation with him a couple weeks ago. So that's terrific. So down below you on my screen, that's very Brady Bunch, is Heather. So take it away.
Hi, my name is Heather Wallace, and I'm running for District 88. And like Diana, I've been in education nearly 20 years. I thought it was going to be the calling that kept me competent and happy and carefree, but all it seems to do right now is bring about a lot of frustration and sadness towards our students and our teachers. But before I go into that, can we just acknowledge what a great week it is for Teacher Appreciation Week, and a round of applause for everyone who has stayed to fight the hard fight in education. If you're a teacher and you're watching this today, we've got your back, and thank you for not giving up on the fight.
That's absolutely right. Yes, that's absolutely.
So, if I look at kind of my home grounds of things, I'm a historian all the way, gifted education, fine arts. I definitely believe that we live in a world where the fine arts programs are dismantling, and especially in the rural areas. So fighting for those programs that are barely hanging on, teacher pay, all of the things that we're used to and that we're seeing. But right now it's got to be back about trusting our teachers that they can make the decision with the curriculum and get rid of these new restrictions that are going to be attacking the hold that we have over ourselves. So
I want to explore a little more of those restrictions coming up in our conversation. It's a very good point. And thank you for mentioning it's Teacher Appreciation Week. I will say that my wife teaches special ed, and she's very excited because she got a free Chick-fil-A sandwich.
Yes.
So we go and go through the drive-thru, show her badge. It was great. She loves it. But she really loves being acknowledged for very difficult work. I don't know how she does it. It's exhausting. And I've taught a little bit at the college level, and I teach a little class to a handful of students every morning on technology. And I think it's important that I just kind of do this, jump in and make the ripples that happen. So I'm a bit kind of on the public education side, but this class is actually at a private school. They just let me go in and teach the classes that I think is most effective for them. Very cool stuff. We can talk about that later too. Okay, so then our last guest, Leilani. I always say your name and I pronounce it like 12 different ways all the time.
That's okay. I answered to all 12, so it's all right. Well, like Diana and Heather, I am an educator. I've been in education over 30 years now. I'm a retired public school teacher from Texas. I also worked at the administration level and central office level, but my heart has always been in the classroom. And so as soon as I retired, I find myself in a private school situation. So I've taught in both rural and urban and very small schools and very, very large schools. And in each of those schools, I have met extraordinary teachers who devote their lives to this profession. And when you devote your lives to this profession, you're not just doing a job, you are answering a calling, as I think one of the other ladies mentioned. Teaching really is, as my grandmother would say, a calling. And I'm so appreciative that I was able to answer that call and spend so much of my life in the classroom. But now I see so much that teachers need advocates like the three of us, like you, Mark, as well at the congressional level. And so I decided to run for this office primarily because my opponent was a huge advocate for voucher system. And we are in a very rural area, and it does not help the majority of our students and causes some real threats to our wonderful rural schools here. I grew up in a rural school. I believe I got as fine an education there as one can get in Texas at that time. And I had teachers who made me feel seen and heard there and who encouraged me to dream dreams. And I'm still living off of that fuel that they gave me in that tiny school.
So thank you. Let's talk quickly geographically. So you are all from different regions of the well, I wouldn't say the Panhandle, Leilani. You're kind of different further down. But let's go. So Diana, where do you live?
So I live in Dumas, Texas,
Okay.
which is kind of near the very top of the Panhandle in the middle. So
Right.
right about 40 miles north of Amarillo.
Mm-hmm. And then
And-
Heather? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm in Pampa.
But you drive.
I drive to Amarillo every day.
And how long is that?
Takes about an hour to get there. But it's nice. I carpool with my husband, so we actually get more time together than we have in the last several years. I just had to give up theater at directing with the change. But
Yeah. And then Leilani, you are out of?
Wichita Falls, Texas.
That's right, Wichita Falls. So from where I am to Wichita Falls, driving is about 3.5 hours.
Mhm.
And then another 2 or hour and a half or so to Denton, which is at the end of the congressional district. So all of us are separated quite a bit by quite a few miles, but we are not separated at all by the passion for education. So I want to read you a stat real fast. I'm looking right now at the Iran war cost tracker. We're 67 days into a war, and we've spent $30 billion, $30 billion and a half dollars. So this website is pretty terrific. Unfortunately, it's sad because it breaks down what we could have spent, which is in economic terms, the opportunity cost of what is the next possible thing you could do. And for that much money, we could have paid 469,674 teachers a salary for a year. So when we talk about pay, and I'd like to talk about what happens in Finland and the model versus the US, and we talk about the inequities in the market, this number is pretty dramatic because it's not just payment for teachers. What we could have also done is 254,000 full ride scholarships to college for kids.
Yes.
And really 46 national parks funded for a year, which is near and dear to my wife's heart. So we're big national parks fans. So just that in itself shows the priority that we set nationally. Now, another conversation that we'll have is both a national conversation as well as a state level conversation when we get into vouchers. But that itself sets the groundwork for who we are as Americans and what a lot of people in power think our priority is, which is not our conversation tonight and not the kids and not the future. Let me posit this argument for you three. Vouchers, why not? I have my money, I pay my money. I don't like the way the school system is working. I should use my money the way I see it. And if I want to use my tax money to go to a private school, why shouldn't I? So with that argument, which I think a lot of people find rational, and they think, that makes a lot of sense. What is wrong with that argument? And I want you three to take it away, because I can talk all day about what is wrong with the argument I just made.
I think we have to go back and think about why public education was even, why we even have public education. It's a saying, hey, I don't plan on having a fire, so I don't need to pay money to firemen, right? It's a public good. And I think that it defeats the purpose when we're saying, I think our tax dollars should follow our children. It is the great equalizer, as everybody says. It is the great equalizer. It is the only way to have the actual American dream. When we think about that, I think it's valid to say that people that say our taxes should follow our students really do not know the history behind public education and education in general for the U.S.
Right. Heather?
Oh, where I see the hard line is the decimation that happens to the small end rural schools that are being forced to consolidate or go to the 4-day school week that don't have other options existing for them. And so now we see the generation of the hybrid school as an alternative that is creating its own problems and is certainly not going to help support the socio aspect needs for the students. So we're hurting those rural schools that need the camaraderie of staying together and isolating them even further, creating that cycle of ghost towns like we drove through not too long ago.
Leilani?
Absolutely. I agree with both Diana and Heather on this. It is, I think it's a scam. It is a taxpayer funded private club because the reality is in Texas, only 4% of students do anything besides public school. And to take $1 billion this first year, and my understanding is they're already trying to up that amount to cover additional applications. I mean, that's 4%. And our school system doesn't just serve 4% of students. The 96% of students is who we need to be focused on. I don't know. I don't understand when people don't do their homework. I don't understand why it came as a surprise to our Texas legislators that, yes, 70 to 80% of the people who applied for this I have no idea what that was, are already sending their student, their child, to a private school. They're already doing that. They're already making their budget. And money is not the object that is keeping that child from getting the education that, as you said, they want and have a right to have. But money is not an issue for them. It is, though, for many of our small schools. I had a mother this weekend tell me about a daughter in public school who was not allowed to go home. She was ill. She wanted to go home. She wasn't allowed to call until a certain time of day, because after a certain time of day, the school gets credit. It was a money issue. That's how tight our public school budgets are right now. Currently, we are still $3,500 per student below the national average on what Texas spends for students. We could have used that $1 billion, they're going to, whatever they add to it, just to meet national standards. And Texas kids should not be below average. We don't have below average children in Texas, and they deserve to be the focus of those tax dollars that are being spent.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so a lot of people will make the argument, and all three of you said this, that something of the government loses money. So I'll say the post office loses $1 billion, whatever the number is of the day, right? It's always changing. And education, schools lose this money. But we never ask, how much money does the military lose? So we never ask, how much does the executive branch lose? The way that we frame these things is not the way we need to frame for the people who need the most help. And that's why I wanted to start with the Jefferson quote. A lot of people, and I truly do believe this, that we have systematically destroyed civics education over the past 30 years. And that's why we see such a low rate of voting and such a low rate of interest. And people assume that you four on this video right now are all politicians because of the nature of the beast that we say we're going to run for office, by definition makes us politicians. And that becomes a bad thing. But really what we're trying to do is represent the body politic, the entire collection of people who are contributing to the wealth and the betterment of the country. And education is the cornerstone of that. So I know that from the federal level, something that's really near to me is an institution called the National Science Foundation. And I'm a mentor for that nationally for this thing called the I-Corps program for startup companies. And it's important because Congress established this a while ago so we can be competitive with China. Well, last week, the president fired the whole board. So we are getting rid, this dismantling of the focus on, and this in cases, this is science, but really it's about education. Because the point of this is to have people who are good at their jobs represent science or represent progress, just like the Smithsonian, just like everything else. And it's filtering down. So in Texas, we have very unique, we're following this model that was implemented in Kansas a while ago, but really interesting and terrible problems. Interesting sounds academic. It's terrible because people will suffer.
And Mark, if I may, we've got to take the perspective that schools are just more than a building, in a community. For many of the rural towns, especially, they are our community centers, our community gathering places. For most, they're often the largest employer that you see there. They're where we shape our future. They're where we meet for Friday nights and have camaraderie and set tradition and memories that bring the town together. That's also where we as educators and our co-teachers are setting the next generation of leaders and workers and neighbors for the journey, making those decisions. Are they going to stay in the area or are they going to move away? And they're those same places that on Monday mornings that we get to see the smiling faces after a weekend and know that we played some sort of part in the joy that they had over the weekend. And if you sit and you talk to those students and you listen to the student perspective, not asking or telling them what to think, but teaching them how to think, which is our job, they will tell you single-handedly that there has always been a teacher right there behind them, pushing them, getting them to think, getting them to make those better decisions. And they'll be remembered fondly for all of the actions that's been there. We just need to remember that they make differences in positive ways that get lost in the bureaucracy, and schools are more than buildings.
That's so well put, because it's absolutely true. I mean, I know personal experience that I've had students come back to me years later. This is both at the college level and high school level. And they said, thank you. Well, basically, it always begins the same, which is it's your fault, which I fully embrace. But they say, thank you, because I'm on this path of doing this stuff because of the one class you taught me. And that's what I mean by the ripples. Now, you three, you do cannonballs in the pool. I'm just making a ripple with my foot, but you are really affecting these lives, and it's so important. But the school is the place of the sense of place is exactly right. And I know that a lot of the Republicans who were trying to stop the voucher system until recently knew this. They knew it deep down that they would destroy the small rural areas. But nasty Texas politics got in play, and they were all voted out in primaries because of the leadership wanted this. And really it's, well, let me ask you three, why do you think that people, big money, is pushing this idea of the voucher system? I mean, what's the incentive? What's going on?
I think it's been by design, and I think Abbott they've been working on this for a while. So of course people are going to think, you know what, we need to invest in vouchers. We've been slowly taking away from public education enough to where we start blaming teachers, we start blaming curriculum, we start blaming the infrastructure, we start blaming the cities that our schools are in. We blame everything, and we keep taking more, and they're wanting us to work on a skeleton crew with no resources. So it's easy for these people that are for the vouchers to say, absolutely, we're not performing the way we're supposed to. And I think that's the part that we lost. And that's one of the reasons I decided to run. I needed to know more about the situation we were in, because I know very well our school system back in the 90s, I mean, it slowly has been just getting worse and worse and worse. It was not like that. We have not changed children. We have not changed teachers. We still have the same heart. We still have the same want. They have slowly been destroying it to get to this point where people are going to say, absolutely, we need vouchers because our public system is not working. Mm-hmm. I think the end game is, of course, this Christian nationalism thinking of the separation. We don't want to have a middle class. We want the top 1% and then the rest of us in poverty. And with that comes also having no knowledge. So then we don't question things. So then we don't try to progress. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to run. When I started looking into, because I will tell you, you start to think it yourself. Are we not good enough as teachers? Are our resources not good enough? We start thinking maybe our taxes were being raised here in Dumas. They're astronomical. And what is the blame? It's your public schools. It's your public schools. When you actually do the research, and I think this is a part as educators that we're trying to bring out to the public, is when they start realizing that if we actually funded public education to the fullest, then our property taxes would go down automatically, right? There's a great video from Raise Your Hand Texas that really explains that concept. What was crazy to me is understanding that the PSF has not been raised since 2019. This is pre-COVID. Since 2019. And what do we have to say about that? I know they keep saying the $1 billion comes from the rainy day fund, this surplus that we have. And they say, well, you know what? The PSF has been set but it happens at the legislation. This is the part where we decided to step in. Every single person here has decided to step in and say no more.
Diana, can you define the PSF for everybody?
It's the per student funding.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been raised since 2019. So I know one of the ladies brought up about we're not even at the national level right now. And to think that pre-COVID was the last time that it was raised, it's ridiculous. There's no reason why we are one of the richest states and we cannot fund our public education the way that it needs to be funded.
So there, inside of this is what I'm trying to get to, which is that real motivation. And you mentioned a couple things here. You said you talked about keeping us kind of behind, and the 1%, and really I think it's a fraction of the 1% now. If we look at the dynamics and the shift of the money, who are taking the money, and this gets into an awful lot of things like AI, different type of curriculum that is a for-profit curriculum that's kind of infused into the system, a lot with things that parents don't really know that's going into the system. So, Leilani, Heather, what do you two think about like real motivation? I mean, why destroy a system?
Go ahead. You were about to speak.
Oh, well, I wanted to add to that. You know, they've also created, and this goes back to No Child Left Behind and so on, this system of accountability. And I have been teaching been in education since 1987. And so I can tell you, when I first started teaching, we had essential elements, but they included things in English, such as reading for research and pleasure. And that's the magic. That's what grabs students. Well, you take that out and you make everything a SMART goal. And yes, you have some good data, and data is a wonderful thing, you know, but it's also something that teachers did a great job with that for many, many years. And there's not a teacher in Texas who can't give a test to her students or have them do a project and tell you what that student knows, where that student is, and what that student needs to learn. And yet we are spending tens of millions of dollars to create the STAR test. And now we are going to have not what the people wanted, which was less of a focus on a standardized test and more teaching, more learning in the classroom, not teaching to a test, but we're having Superstar. So we're having more tests. And I think it's important, when you're asking why, that you also talk about the fact that the publisher of that test, the creator of that test, who's getting all of those dollars, is a publicly traded company. And it would be very interesting to see how many current legislators own stock in that company and are literally making money from that decision.
You're getting to the heart of the matter, which is about corruption. And yes, I think a lot of these decisions are driven by that, the selfish interest of people in politics who run for their own benefit. Yes. And I'm supposed to be calm, but I get so angry at this, because what it does is it steals from you, it steals from its futures, and it makes us into a spiral that quickly, if we look internationally at, for example, top 10 universities now, new study came out, I think it was a couple weeks ago, out of the top 10 universities that used to start with Harvard and Yale, you know the deal. Now they're Chinese universities. This is superpower suicide. And it starts where the three of you live every day. It really does. And the idea of corruption, where it's manifest in these decisions, it's so infuriating that this is the whole reason that we're doing this fight, is to stop it, and it comes back to money. So sorry for that aside, but boy, I get burned up about that. So
Well, we have the people, and I think we can all speak of this. My opponent didn't even go to public school. She went to a private school, and we're letting these people make decisions on a very important subject as far as deciding, vouchers, laws for schools, and they've never lived the situation that we live in with public education. And I can probably say it's the same for the rest of us that are running, besides myself. These politicians that are there right now have no clue on the decisions that they make. And it is corruption. It is full on corruption and for their own benefit.
Mm-hmm. So Heather, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I think you're right. We've hit the head on the nail with the idea of corruption, where the finances and the money just ends up going back to these publishing companies. But sadly, it's also leading to restrictions that we're seeing, not only with course offerings such as electives, but with the patterns of change we're about to see, especially in the social studies and English courses, with the restrictions on what can and cannot be taught. Now, part of that's coming from Bill 12, part of it's coming, from restrictions from, I think it's State Bill 412, that was expanding the liability that teachers are at risk now for instructional materials that might go against some of these other restrictive tendencies that have been put in place through 10 and 12. For those that don't know, that's the 10 Commandments coming into play in the classroom, and then the DEI related instruction. But with social studies, they're completely re-monitoring what can and cannot be placed in the curriculum for K through 8, and then into high school as well. And then basically book banning for the English curriculums. And that's not going to keep our students competitive as they go to join university outside of the state of Texas.
So. No, not at all. So
absolutely not. And in addition to just the 10 Commandments, which, you can read the Bible as a piece of literature, that's fine. But I think they have us, look at what we're doing. We're inserting the Bible here. But on the other side of the table, while they're holding this big shiny object up for people to say, who's going to say, well, you shouldn't read the Bible? Who's going to say that? But on the other hand, that list that Heather was referring to of the books that we're allowed to teach have very few Hispanic authors, have very few African-American authors. I don't even know. I've just given it a brief glance, but other ethnicities are also not represented there. And one of the things that we know about teaching students to read and creating readers is that when you give them characters that they can relate to, who look like themselves, they do better. And that alone is evidence that they are not making decisions at the top that are intended to increase student achievement. They throw that phrase around a lot, but that's not what they're doing. Same as I think it was Heather who mentioned teacher autonomy. But when a teacher teaches you something that she is passionate about or he is passionate about, that's going to be so much more effective than a teacher who just has a list, a prescribed list. In my classes, of course, I have freedom in my little part-time teaching job. So because it is a private school. And so I have, I had students doing literary circles. So they wouldn't all be reading the same book, much less the class next door reading the same books as we were. They were getting some student choice in what they were learning. I could still teach the same objectives, but I did it in ways that focused on individual students and student interest.
I do have to speak a little bit about that because I am a curriculum coordinator for a district, and I know the new curriculum top to bottom, left to right. That's the majority of my time spent, right, in my job. And I do have to say it is a very hearty curriculum. And it is. In fact, I did a video talking about one of the second grade, one of the units that they had that spoke about immigration. So I do have to say that. But I think it goes beyond that because the curriculum itself right now is really good. But you have to think about why we had to end up to that. You have to think TEA, it's a ripple effect, like Mark said. The state makes these decisions over what needs to be done, and then TEA has to compensate for that. There were some amazing educators that went into putting this new curriculum in place, right, to make it as hearty as it could be. And I understand the part of autonomy, but I think understand that. But you have to think of the fact that of the situation that we're in. The reason why this curriculum, for example, our school that we have right now, that's an F school, we're about to get that school out of improvement. And the reason why is because we've had great curriculum. You can give a teacher anything, and great teachers are going to do the very best that they can, right? With whatever it doesn't matter the curriculum. But you have to think about the reason why TEA did this in order to help. I have a 19-year-old teacher right now. We don't have the teachers that we had back in the day because the funding has been taken so far back that we don't have. We are having literal high school graduates step into a teaching role. And for them to be able to teach our children, we have to have something for them to start on. So if you guys have looked at the curriculum, the new curriculum at all, it is very guided for these situations. So I know there's a lot of bad rap with TA, and there's a lot of things that we have to fix, but it starts at the very top. Like you said, the lists, the HB2, HB3, HB, every single one of these, and what TEA is then having to do in order that trickle down effect that it happens. Just because I feel like kind of like with the whole taxes and stuff, we put the blame on that, but it really starts at the top. It starts with people like us running and at the legislation when they do these HB3, HB4, because I don't think their intention was to take autonomy away. It was just that trickle down effect of what they have to do.
Oh, I think they are very much into controlling what we are teaching in our classrooms. Absolutely. And I think that, again, this goes back to the purpose that you spoke so well about. And the fact that they, this sounds crazy, but they really are trying to encourage that disparity between social classes so that we do have people who are not capable of saying, hey, our minimum wage has not been raised since 2009, and we are trying to live at 2026 cost and prices. I think that it is very much about control, and it frightens me. I understand your position on this, Diana. I was a curriculum director for Dallas ISD. And during the time when I was in charge of creating reading curriculum for those schools, I loved that job. It was one of my favorite jobs. But and our reading scores, our English scores went up during those years when we had that particular curriculum. But I will tell you that even though I created it, it was my dream curriculum, and I created it, I would not go into my classroom and teach the exact way that was prescribed or suggested in that particular curriculum, because we do have individual students. And that is the wonderful thing about public school. We do have a variety of students. And because we don't say no, we don't say, oh no, your test grade is not high enough for you to come to this school. Sorry. We don't do that. We accept everybody. And I just think that that inclusive part, that not prescribing and opening up a teacher choice. You know, most teachers know their communities and they know what's appropriate for their communities and their parents and their students. I always, as a teacher, one of the things that I asked my students to list on the first day was, what rating of movies do your parents let you watch in your home? And that was a good tell on you know what students had been exposed to and what they had not been exposed to in the class, and therefore I could match that and make sure that I was up to the standards of that community and those parents. And I think that the control from the top and some of the messages that are being given from the top as far as what teachers are teaching in the classroom are just so ridiculous. And yet it justifies that if they can tell that lie and people believe those lies, then it justifies they're taking more and more and more control over what we teach. And they've used the testing again as an excuse for some of that. They've said, look, they're not doing well on this test. They've got to teach this. They're not doing well on this test that we've just changed or we've raised the level of. And so now we need, nothing wrong with a strong curriculum. That's fine. We need guidance, and obviously, as you said, with teachers coming in to fill spots, because we do have so many leaving the profession. It's a great exodus right now. But some of those things are causing more stress for teachers, and they're taking away the joy of teaching for us. I mean, I loved, and I'm sure I don't know any good teacher who didn't love deciding for themselves what their students were ready for and how they were going to present it and what they could present to them to best reach those students. And so I do think that it is a crime. I think it's a shame that we are taking that away from teachers.
So I'm a proud product of the Texas education system, public school all the way through high school, and then I went to Texas A&M. And I have 2 degrees from there. So I know the value of a real solid education, but I am also a stereotypical liberal arts guy, and I believe wholeheartedly we learn how to learn. And that's the skill that sets us up for the future. And we know it's changed since the 50s and 60s that careers go all over the place. Now with technology, and we see this in the data, that people have a career that might be 3 to 4 years, and then they shift to something brand new. They have to learn how to think on their feet. And they have to, so an example, when I was in grad school, we were reading Ulysses by James Joyce. I have a very conflicted history with James Joyce, the author. Ulysses is a very difficult novel. There was also a banned novel that the government tried to put the kibosh on because of pornographic kind of material. And if you read it today, you think, really? And it's the same thing with book burning, the same thing. How do we protect our kids? It's much like everything is around the protection of kids, from showing how old you are to use your computer. And there's a federal law that we can talk about. Maybe it's a different topic, but to have guarantee on age verification just to log into your machine. There are a lot of unintended consequences, which is really what we're talking about here, the unintended consequences of legislation that I think at the beginning isn't even well meaningful. It has serious undercurrents of bad stuff with it. So I do want to say, though, to go back, when we talk about the money that goes to teachers, I know my wife spends quite a bit of money just on her own buying stuff for the classroom. And it's every year. And it's not what people think. It's not like, oh, I'm buying stuff to put on the walls. It's real stuff. It's learning material for kids because they don't have it and the school doesn't have it. Now, I mentioned Finland earlier. Finland is a good example of a country that decided we have to focus on our one, and I'm going to put it in economic terms, our natural resource, which is people. Because Finland has, they had at the time the Soviet Union, then Russia right next door. They have a lot of trees and they have a lot of reindeer and a lot of other things, the fishing and everything, but they didn't have much as far as natural resources. So they invested, I'm simplifying, so if you're finished, please don't yell at me, but they decided we're going to invest in our people. So they have now arguably one of the best education systems in the world. I say arguably because I'm sure people can argue, but there's a fantastic documentary about the Finnish education system, and they pay their teachers very, very well. It's a very competitive job. You get it. It's held in very high esteem in the community. And the kids who go to school do not do what our kids do. They don't sit in school all day long, which is really, we can talk historically, and Heather, you might have some insight into this just as a historian, but this is the consequence of basically the Industrial Revolution, right? And people in factory work. So they don't do that. They let the kids explore and chart their own way with the teacher being a guide. So when I taught, and I give you this one small story and then I'll stop talking, but when I taught economics, I taught both economics and some technology classes at the college here in Amarillo. And I got in trouble one year because the textbook that I chose to use in the class was free, an economics textbook from part of the London School of Economics. And I talked to some people there, very, very good, costs no money, covers things extremely well, and talks about topics that traditional textbooks don't really explore. I got in trouble because we weren't selling the books from the bookstore. And so we need to get revenue for the bookstore. So I said, well, they can always order the printed book and the bookstore can order it. And the number of students that make a choice between a $400 book and a $0 book, 0% chose the $400 book. They still got the same education. But we were driven, the curriculum was driven by the publishers. And they would come in and they would say, can I buy you lunch and show you the textbook? But my history in the corporate world is no one ever buys you anything because you have to make an independent decision. You always have to be transparent. You sit in a glass room, nobody gets paid off. And that's not how it works in politics. And it's really not how it worked in the higher academia. I know some people argue and they'll say, no, we have policies in place, but I did not see that. I saw shortcuts. I saw what the path of least resistance was. And I saw teachers going in saying, okay, we're going to do the best we can with what we have, but we're not getting paid a lot. So the problem is people will say, it's a beatdown. I'm really tired. The administration's killing me. I'm done. So yeah, it's a flood of people leaving the profession. And then what we end up with is the 19-year-olds coming in as student teachers, real teachers in the classroom with no guidance. So there's a lot in this that go from vouchers to undercutting an entire system. My perspective, though, and what I want to get a little to is the Department of Education. So tell me about your relationship with the Department of Education, and then I will explain why I'm kind of taking this little detour.
Well, this does not speak well of us, but the reality is that the Department of Education was in part created because there were students who were not being served as they should have been.
Yeah, right.
Yes. And so in reality, states couldn't be trusted at that point to serve all students. And I think that we're seeing with the voucher program that was pushed through in Texas against the will of the people, that is the case today, that maybe we can't be trusted to serve all students as we should. When you think about it, there are 254 counties in Texas, right? 180 of those counties don't even have one private school. And in my district, we have around 100 schools, separate schools, and we have 3 who will be able to accept vouchers. One high school, I think one middle school, I'm not sure, and one kind of a kindergarten, early elementary school. So, when we think about this really is, it's not reform. It really is a school funding heist, and that's worrisome. And then when we think about the fact that without the Department of Education, there will be no national standards that we have to meet in terms of equitable education for students, then it's a scary time. It's a scary time. And it's insulting too. The last two, it's insulting to have someone who is not a pro-public education person, as the 2016 head of the Department of Education was not. And then the person that we have now being totally unrelated to education at all and thinking, oh, we can do this. Well, there's not a teacher alive who hasn't had to face somebody, whether it's a cousin or a parent who's a student who has said, well, anybody can do this. Well, no, that's not true. Teachers are professionals. We know about child development. We know about our content. I am, as I said, a 31-year veteran of education. I have, as I'm sure these ladies do, teaching awards running out my ears. I have successful students who've gone on to wonderful positions all over the country. And I would never believe that I was the best teacher for my child, K through 12, all subjects. I would never believe that. And so we have to get back to what you were talking about, Mark, in Finland, the fact that the teaching profession is not respected. And I think in America, that has a lot to do with the fact that we respect money and teachers aren't paid a lot. And so why would you do this? Why would a person who could do something else do anything else, or not do something else? And, for a long time at the early part of my career, I felt like there was more prestige in being a teacher because people understood that this was a calling and this was something that not everyone could do. Not everyone has the patience. Not everyone has the content expertise. Not everyone has the child development awareness to be effective. Not everyone has the creative strategies to be effective in the classroom. And
the real question, though, is how much of professional wrestling do you know? Because apparently that's a mandatory thing.
You're right. Hey, maybe I could lead a professional wrestling organization, since evidently that there are lots of transferable skills.
That's, yeah.
Who knew?
Okay. I will say that from the so we know there are they want to dismantle the Department of Education. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of issues in this about what the executive branch can do when Congress allocates money. We're seeing right now, we thought we resolved this during Nixon, but apparently we haven't. So the administration today is taking money allocated by Congress, like, so over here. And Congress is being just totally flaccid and not reacting. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say all of Congress, I mean the Republicans. So, but what the president is trying to do, and I'll just say it here, is they're trying to cut from the Department of Education professional development for educators. That's $2.2 billion a year. Services for English learners, $890 million. Academic enrichment, $1.4 billion. Before and after school programs, $1.3 billion. Rural schools, $220 million. And students experiencing homelessness, $129 million. If you add those numbers up, that's like Tuesday of the Iran war. I mean, really, it's like maybe a week. And it's very frustrating to me. Like I said early on, that this is our priority. But really, if you add up the $2 billion fund that they want to merge in other programs, and they're saying we're going to take the money and merge it, we'll put it over here into HUD, or we'll put it over here until there are all sorts of machinations they're doing. It's going to make it more difficult for parents to get the support they need, more difficult for teachers to get the help they need. And they're undercutting the value of this. They're saying, well, it's $2 billion of fund, but really it's $4.6 billion of value, which means they don't know how to do math. And now I said I'm a liberal arts guy, but I know how to do math.
Absolutely.
I know how the numbers work. And it's not just corruption, it's incompetence. And we're facing this tsunami of both. The only way to survive it is people like you getting into office, all three of you. So the Department of Education, the cuts, how it affects special education is one thing that we really haven't talked too much about. The TRIO program, but special ed, a lot of parents who rely on this help for their children do not know they will not get the help. And then we talk about why the Department of Education, which is an umbrella of civil rights. So civil rights always extends across everybody. It's constitutional. Everybody has civil rights. So that's why it's a federal government thing. You don't have civil rights in Texas, and you don't have, it doesn't change when you go across the border to New Mexico. Same thing with students. But yet the Office of Civil Rights in the Department of Education, the lawyers who can look into why students were treated unfairly, they cut those people by 50%.
Yes.
Who do we go to? This is, so from the federal level, things that in Congress we can fix that go down to the local level to help you.
And it makes a big difference. We saw that this year. With all of these cuts that started happening, we did not receive our funding right away as we needed to. When we think about the needs of our most special populations, it had a huge impact. We were scrambling as a district trying to allocate funding from other places. We're already working on a deficit at most districts, if not all. And then now at these federal programs that are, so they keep saying, there's still somebody there. When you think about the support that we're receiving, we're not receiving it in time the way we need to, or we're going to end up not receiving it at all. It puts us more into this deficit and more into this. So we already don't have enough teachers. We were even thinking we're not going to be able to fund paraprofessionals, our amazing paraprofessionals that help with our ACC students. Our special populations that require behavior students, ones that require almost a one-on-one, they're not going to be admitted into private school. So it really has a huge impact at the federal level, even though they say, well, there's still somebody there.
So I'll just reiterate. Education is key to everything. I mean, people say it a lot, but we know we know the difference in how much money someone makes in a job when they have a degree that's not a degree from high school, a high school degree, community college degree, college degree. We know. Now the numbers are changing rapidly on this because of technology like AI, which I really want to ask you three about in 1 second. But we know there is value. I know personally, I talked about Ulysses at the same time. I try to shop local bookstores as much as possible. And I bought a book called The Road to Freedom, which is an economics book, which I would love to talk about at some point because it is fantastic. But at the same time, I bought another book called Dungeon Crawler Carl, which is hilarious. And the thing about reading is you have just an infinite selection of things that might tickle you or things that might intrigue you or things you find fascinating. And I will go from one book out to quantum physics, to politics, back to astronomy, because that's what being a human is. And education is to help us learn that exploration. Life isn't just watching Netflix. So,
That's right.
all right. So let's see. I want to keep on time here. And I really appreciate all three of you taking your time out of the evening. I know it's difficult, especially around dinner time. Let's get to some questions. Oh, there we go. For Mark, what will you do to bring the Department of Education back to life? Okay, I have to read it around this camera. So it's about funding. Well, okay. So you guys indulge me just 1 second. It's easy to say we will fund the Department of Education properly, but it is funded. Congress has mandated certain amount of money to go to the Department of Education. They've done it. If you look at the budget, for example, programs, special ed, things like this, the administration is saying, like I said previously, we'll do our own thing. Congress is Article 1 of the Constitution. Congress is the boss. The executive administers these funds, but you can't say we're not going to do it. So how would I do it? We have to be very forceful and say this is the authority of Congress to say we are going to spend the money the right way, and we are going to fully fund, and we are not going to dismantle the Department of Education. And we have to tell people this is the value. People misunderstand. They think the Department of Education is full of what is it? The woke people saying you must learn how to do crochet. I always make jokes about crochet. I get in trouble about this in the comments because I like crochet. I'll say chess because I really like chess. We're going to teach people how to play chess all the time, but that's not true. The Department of Education has mandates to really help our students and help the teachers that are helping the students. So how would I do it? First, be forceful in the power that Congress has. Do not back down and do not say, yeah, it's okay. You do whatever you want, Mr. President. You're the big man. No, it's a small man. And we have to use the power, and the power from Congress is the power of the people. That's why we do the election every 2 years. Then we fully fund it. We go through the budget. The way we do it is we say, and this will be a little more transformative, but I've said this many times. We defund different agencies, including ICE. We send that money back to the counties where it belongs. And in this case, the counties or in the cities that need to fund the schools the right way. You just don't give cash in a bucket. You make sure that everyone is responsible for the money. This gets back to a whole national job plan. This is when we have people in school, they can leave school and they can get employed, especially in the face of AI and other automation it's really gutting things right now. And it's happening. So how would I do it? Forceful, what the power is, and then budget and make education a priority. It has to be a national priority. And that means teachers have to get paid the right amount. And we are just doing a disservice. And like all of you have said, when you don't get paid the right amount, people say, why are you doing it? Why don't you go work at whatever?
Right.
They don't understand. Some of the most valuable stuff I've ever done is in a classroom. It really is. The value meaning what is good in life. So
it's a privilege. It is a privilege to be a teacher. And
the students,
responsibility.
I'll tell you what, the students are not dumb. They will know if you're trying to BS them. They will know if you don't know what you're talking about. They will see right through it. Yeah. They might play along, but they know. They will poke at you. They know, and that's the dynamic we need, because that makes people better teachers. So,
and I'd like something that you mentioned, Mark, at the beginning, where your wife was really happy to get a Chick-fil-A sandwich.
Yeah. We
survive and thrive with so little and are so thankful for anything that's given to us. They are making us believe, first with the $8,000 race, right? Everybody got an $8,000 for teachers, and you know, I keep saying it's these crumbs that are being thrown at us. So first it was with the $8,000, because to them, they don't think there's anything wrong with not raising the PSF, because, hey, we invested money in you. You guys are getting $8,000. Again, these crumbs that are being thrown at us. Then, to make it even worse, the teacher incentive allotment came in. And again, this idea of, you see, we are doing what's best for you. Let me create this situation for you where now you're being judged and you're only receiving money if you do well enough in this. Here's this money that should be for everybody. It should not be on you prove yourself basis. That money should have been gone straight into the teacher's hands. And instead So if they keep dangling, either throwing crumbs or dangling this little, fruit in front of you, to keep us in this want, this need in education, and not really, rise up and say enough. Like, we need to be funded fully, and we need to be paid what we deserve. We need to not have our teachers have two jobs. I have several teachers that work two jobs just to make ends meet.
Yeah, that should never happen. The priority is for the kids. And when a teacher has to dilute that for another job and they come in the classroom saying I was working pretty late, or conversely, when a student sees a teacher working the part-time job and then the student says, oh, wait a minute, why are you here? Well, it's like when we've all seen teachers that we knew, and like when you're in high school, you see a teacher in the wild, they think, weird.
Yeah. Why are you not living in school, right?
Right.
I thought you went to school.
Aren't you here for me? That's right. And we should be there for them. So, okay. So, okay. I'd love to hear y'all's take on, I said y'all, I'm like, wow. I'd love to hear y'all's take on the governor's plan to get rid of property taxes. Oh, yeah. You guys take this one away.
He's had, 20 something years to do this? And he's just doing that now that he's feeling it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I hate to say this on camera, but it's a bunch of bull.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed. Absolutely. And, we have to remember that those taxes do profit our public schools and provide a significant portion of funding for them. But they also do things like pay for fire departments, pay for our local police. So again, follow the money, look at privatizing. And when that happens, of course, think of all of the people in those professions whose retirement pots are also going to be hit, and the long-term effects of that. What I love about what I've heard from all of you is the fact that you all understand that this is not just about saving a school system. It really is about saving our way of life. It really is about saving our communities. And
yeah, that's right.
I would be so honored to work with all of you. What a powerhouse we could form to change Texas for the better.
Yes.
Yeah.
Heather, what do you think on that one? I like it.
She said it. Well,
she
she said it best, that it is a bunch of bull. When you've had time to sit on things and decide to make those decisions at the end as a Hail Mary attempt, if you will, of getting past the next election cycle, we just have our priorities all in a big old mess.
There's no free ride in a democracy. There's no free ride in a country that espouses freedom. We all do our part. We chip in and we pay. Yeah. And we could talk a long time about what taxes are and what they're not, what they pay for and what they don't. And we're seeing, but they do determine a priority. And our priority is not what it should be, which is helping the next generation, building the pathway in education. So you don't get off lightly unless you're a billionaire who I guess, what is the tax rate on those guys? Is something like 1% or something. So it's very frustrating. And
we've lost the humanitarian concept of humanity in education. Mm-hmm. And have made it just a business and an economic ploy, and that's not what it is.
That's right. And I speak in those economic terms sometimes, but I try to do it because economics has been a traditional liberal art, much like science and arts have always been together until recently separated them, thinking that if you're going to be a STEM major, for example, the world is at your feet. But this is not. Technology is threatening that very group of people, but what it doesn't do is threaten the humanity that we have built into our students. And that's a critical thing. And only really excellent teachers, and when I say excellent teachers, I mean teachers who are both passionate, but also that they're getting compensated the right way for that passion. It's both. We can't expect people to have power. We can't expect our awesome teachers to work 2 jobs. You just can't. The priority is for the students.
Absolutely.
At the higher education level, we have an avid puppet as Texas Tech Chancellor in Crichton, canceling DEI, gender, and sexual orientation programs. What can be done to reverse these reckless acts? Oh, okay. I'm going to go with this one. Then I want to give this to Diana. We fix it by fixing who the governor is. The governor, traditionally in Texas, I'm going to be a little professor here. People always tell me, don't be professor boy. But I will say, the governor in Texas is usually traditionally a weaker governorship than most people realize because of the way the structure is. But the governor determines the fate of public education at higher ed level. And if we change the governor, that governor appoints the right people to the right border regions, and those people get the right people involved who are the presidents. I hear you 100%. So that's my little thing, but they gotta take it away because you have the sign behind you.
Absolutely. And listen, if there's one thing aside from the wonderful things that Gina has to offer us, is that she is such a proponent for public education, and looking into what her campaign is all about. And she will tell you the reason she decided to run, but just the simple fact that she sees things for what they are and that public education is at the forefront, she's going to put the right people in the right places to help our communities, to help our state. So absolutely. I mean, right there, that you get him out. We need him out.
That's right. That's right. And I will say too, that it's not just Texas Tech. Texas A&M, my alma mater, a professor got in trouble for teaching Plato because it was like a DEI thing. It's Plato. I'm not talking about the stuff we play for the kids. Stuff you want to eat. It's Plato, one of the greatest philosophers in the ancient world. When we tell professors or teachers that you can't do these things because it's hurting someone, you name it, the excuses are all over the place. We do a disservice, a terrible disservice. And I know at Texas Tech, for example, they have limited that you can't, in the health sciences, you can't talk about sex differences or gender differences. But you know what? There are differences. I know doctors, I know my doctor will say, you're different than a woman who came in here a minute ago. I know this because we've had children and I can't have children. I know there are differences. I'm simplifying. I'm making, it's a satiric argument. And that's what you get as a liberal arts boy. So, but it's frustrating. It really is. So
they're taking DEI to an extremism, just kind of like the whole wokeness, and it's this extreme. So now everything is DEI, instead of bringing equitable access of anything, education, healthcare, opportunity. It's just bringing equitable access to the public. Everything is DEI. It's a way to keep us oppressed.
So the father of DEI is Thomas Jefferson. Really, if we want to take it that extreme, then let's just do it. Thomas Jefferson, and that's why I started this conversation with one of our founding fathers who wrote our foundational documents, believed so strongly in equal access of public education to everybody. So this stuff is nonsense. So the short answer is the way to fix it is vote and get the governor replaced with somebody who does care about education.
Absolutely. He's spending $1 billion this year on a private school club while our classrooms go underfunded, and that is not okay. He has to go.
Right. Okay.
Just like AP psychology is no longer allowed in the state of Texas because of a unit on gender studies. So now our students can't take that AP exam for university.
This is new. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, that's all right.
Yeah.
All right. So we have another question. I think there's one about UNT up there, wasn't there? Okay. Question for each of the speakers: how you change things for the better once you are in office? What are your priorities? How you get your bills passed? So this is a good 10-hour question. So let's try to get this one in just a couple minutes each of you, because I know it can get into a lot of details.
Well, I think that one of the things that we've seen is this kind of pupper master thing that's going on from the top to Abbott to our own legislators. And we've got to stop that and start doing what representatives are supposed to do, which is to represent the people that are in their district. And the reality is that someone from an opposing political party can have a good idea. And if that idea is good for the people in my case, House District 69, then I will sign on to that particular idea. If it's good for the people, then it's good, period. It doesn't matter if the person proposing it has an R or a D after their name. And so I do think we will have to work across the aisle to make things better for everyone. But I want to believe that just as most teachers go into the professions for all the right reasons, I want to believe that most of our representatives do too. I certainly see that we are challenging the ones who seem not to have done that. And I think it's important that we vote en masse for candidates who are supportive of education. Martin, all of the people in your districts, I certainly hope will vote for you, and the people in my district, I certainly hope will vote for me. But it really goes down to recognizing when people are ignoring the 96% of us and focusing on making things better for people who already have it pretty darn good. And we need to just make those changes. Now, when we're in office, I mean, I think that funding has to be a priority for our public schools. It's not about throwing money at a problem, but I can tell you, having worked in some very poor districts and having worked in one private school where tuition was $25,000 a kid, that you can do a whole lot with money. When money is handy, you can do a whole lot with that in terms of making education better for them. In that school, I didn't have to wait for 2 weeks to get a computer fixed. I didn't have to, it was, on the phone, 2 minutes, the time it took the tech person to walk down from their office to my classroom. Yeah. And those kinds of things make a difference. Having the resources that I think you mentioned, Diana, are so important. That teachers paying for their own resources. We've always done that. We'll probably always do that. We're always going to have that $5 bill for that kid who needs lunch that day, because that's part of having a teacher's heart. But that shouldn't be taken advantage of. And teachers should not feel bad about saying, we need more money, because we're tired of this, well, if you're in it for the money, bullcorn. You don't say that to your doctor. When she hands me a bill, I don't say, well, if you became a doctor just for the money. But we say that to teachers who are equal professionals and sometimes have just as much education as those doctors do. So I think that funding is where we have to start.
Heather, what do you think?
I think it's time to stop the insanity. The definition of insanity is when you keep doing the same thing expecting a different result. And I feel like that's the circular argument that we've been making the last several years. So as far as the campaigning process, she's absolutely right. You've got to go out and listen to the will of the people and be proactive in those conversations, finding out what the people want and represent them appropriately for what they are wanting. Advocate for them, because that's our job, is to advocate for our citizens in our area, to advocate for those students that we are entrusted with in the classroom. And then upon being elected, not be a kind of a lame duck or laissez-faire, and be proactive with writing that legislation and not going back and breaking promises that we made to our constituents during the campaigning process. We just have to stay proactive.
Thank you, Diana.
I do have to say, along with what the lady said, staying in the trenches. The reason we decided, and the reason we want people to vote for us, is because we're living daily the good and the bad. So I think not forgetting that, just living in the trenches, because it's more than just public education. We can get into healthcare and infrastructure, right? So just staying in the trenches. And I think it's twofold. Being in at the legislature is, one, I will not back down. When we get there, if I know, for example, vouchers, I don't care, throw me out. But there are certain things that I know that I will not back down on, because I know, and I'm doing this for my people. But then also, like Tallarico said, we have to be able to go across the aisle. And just as in everything else, just as in education, people are not going to see eye to eye. And I think it's all about having a conversation. So I think it's kind of, look at it both ways. Being at the legislature is being able to fight. And you know that you're going to have to fight, but also being able to know when to go across the aisle and have those conversations.
That's right. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just have to say, I'm looking at us and we all look like sweet, nice people. But you bet I know these people. We will fight like the devil for you. and our students.
Yes. I will just say quickly on my side, which is slightly different. So I have several priorities, but one is, of course, the natural resources and water in this area. The second is rebuilding an economy that we need because we're not keeping our people here, especially in the entire district. Supporting education, especially higher education, with the right grant funding, especially in science, to make us competitive. But really, one of my priorities is to get the money out of the game. We have so much big money sloshing around, it is ridiculous. And that is funded by just a handful of people. And people are convinced by the big money coming in. I think all of us see that as a big problem. And what we take in as donations in a campaign really reflects what we believe in. And I know that on my campaign, we don't take that corporate PAC money. It's all individuals, because that's who we represent. And I'll say one last thing about this, and then we'll get to the next question, because I have to make sure that I keep your time on time, is that many people say in Congress, you have to go across the street to a phone bank and spend 50% of your day calling and dialing for money. And I will not do that. There is too much work to do that you can't be a part-time job. So full-time, working for people, and then getting back to the district and showing up. And with town halls right now, the guy that represents us does zero. Doesn't show up, nothing. And if you want to try to get a hold of him, good luck. The whole different thing, it has to be with the right representation. I'm firmly a supporter of all three of you, what you're saying, but really about the foundational documents of this country and the reason why we do this. And we do it for people who don't need to think about this every day of their lives. They just need to know that someone's got them, someone will support them, and someone will look out for them. And I'm talking about farmers and ranchers and price stabilization and market stabilization and pricing floors and all that economic stuff. But it's really about getting the money out so people can have their voice heard. Okay. What we got? That's it. We're going to wrap this up then. Okay. So thank you, all three of you, so much. If you guys want to conclude, maybe make the pitch. I'll start. Leilani, I'll start with you.
Barnett for Texas.org. Barnett for Texas.org. That's where people can sign in, learn a little bit more about me. There are lots of buttons for you to click, including that donation button. but also there's a survey there. We want to hear your ideas and hear the concerns that are important to you. So please fill that out. We'd love to read it.
Great. Heather?
I can be found at Wallace for Liberty and Voice TXH88 at Gmail. Great Facebook page there. I've also got a wonderful Facebook page in addition to the website. But my platforms are definitely following education, rural healthcare. That's one we didn't get to touch on much today, but healthcare and healthcare deserts are deeply affecting our area, and those blasted data centers.
So I think on that note, I do want to do another town hall about healthcare, and it would be great to bring you back. We could talk about this, and maybe all three of you, if you want to talk about it. It's a very important thing that we can't lose track. As a matter of fact, when I'm talking to people, one of the top issues is health insurance, healthcare, and
there's been some more stuff occurring in Wheeler County, even from when you and I were up there in Wheeler, that I need to touch base with you on.
Okay.
I've been visiting with one of the families there.
Okay. We have misargued. And this happened under Obama, and it was the only rational argument they could make, which is about health insurance. But really, the argument is about health care, not insurance. And it's time for us to fix it. The time is now. Diana, your turn.
So again, I'm Diana Loya, running for House District 87. My website is dianaloyahd87.com. And I just want, as a small little pitch, I want to say we need to start thinking about not voting for a party when we are at the crossroads that we're at. We need to start thinking about voting for the person. Yes. And so I'm speaking to my Republican friends, to my Democrat friends. I'm just speaking to the public, because when you look at us, our little House districts, we can make huge impact. But we have to stop thinking about parties and start thinking about us. Mm-hmm. The other pitch that I wanted to make, we have some great news coming from a couple of us candidates. So be on the lookout for House District 87 with Texas Challengers. That's coming soon.
Great. We will put in the links to all your websites in the description here on YouTube once we get all the stuff edited, so everyone can just kind of click it. What would we do without the internet? Maybe in future we'd say, what would we do without AI? And we're sitting in glass jars, just our brains, with 0% employment. But we can discuss that later. So anyway, I just really appreciate all three of you coming. This is a really important conversation, and I just know your experience, my experience, but why we do the things we do. The only reason we do the things we do is for other people. And those people in this circumstance are people that have no voice. They're just kids trying to get by. And we're trying to get them as much information as possible for having to have a successful life and inspire them to be something bigger and better. I love doing that. So I'm hoping that this path that we're all taking is the way that we can win and use some muscle to see that happen and to help the rest of people in the country too. Because, as Texas goes, so does the country. And I know that's a Texas-centric idea, but we're a pretty big state. And we're defining a lot of the mess that's going on nationally right now, too. Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much, all of you, for coming. It's great to see you. And thank all of you who are either watching live or will watch us later. But please let us know if there's something that we need to talk about. I'm sure everyone here will be happy to answer the questions. So thank you, everybody. And good night.